Hey guys, it's your girl Sage. I hope you're having a wonderful day or night whenever this video finds you. I'm here with our daily bread, and for today we have the second book of Samuel, chapter 3. Now there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David grew stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Sons of David. Sons were born to David in Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon by Ahinoam the Jezreelitess. His second, Shiliah, by Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. The third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, the son of Haggith. The fifth, Shephatiah, the son of Abital. And the sixth, Ithream, by David's wife Eglah. These were born to David in Hebron. Abner joins forces with David. Now it was so, while there was a war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner was strengthening his hold on the house of Saul. And Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. So Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Why have you gone into my father's concubine?" Then Abner became very angry at the words of Ishbosheth and said, "Am I a dog's head that belongs to Judah? Today I show loyalty to the house of Saul your father, to his brothers and to his friends, and have not delivered you into the hand of David, and you charge me today with a fault concerning this woman? May God do so to Abner, and more also, if I do not do for David as the Lord has sworn to him, to transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul and set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan to Beersheba." And he could not answer Abner another word because he feared him. Then Abner sent messengers on his behalf to David, saying, "Who is the land?" Saying also, "Make your covenant with me, and indeed my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel to you." And David said, "Good, I will make a covenant with you. But one thing I require of you. You shall not see my face unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come to see my face." So David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, "Give me my wife Michal, whom I betrothed to myself for 100 foreskins of the Philistines." And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, from Paltiel, the son of Laish. Then her husband went along with her to Bahurim, weeping behind her. So Abner said to him, "Go, return." And he returned. Now Abner had communicated with the elders of Israel, saying, "In time past you were seeking for David to be king over you. Now then, do it. For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and the hand of all their enemies." And Abner also spoke in the hearing of Benjamin. Then Abner also went to speak in the hearing of David in Hebron all that seemed good to Israel and the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner and 20 men with him came to David at Hebron, and David made a feast for Abner and the men who were with him. Then Abner said to David, "I will arise and go and gather all Israel to my lord the king, that they may make a covenant with you, and that you may reign over all that your heart desires." So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. Joab murders Abner. At that moment, the servants of David and Joab came from a raid and brought much spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. When Joab and all the troops that were with him had come, they told Joab, saying, "Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he sent him away, and he is gone in peace." Then Joab came to the king and said, "What have you done? Look, Abner came to you. Why is it that you sent him away, and he has already gone? Surely you realize that Abner, the son of Ner, came to deceive you, to know your going out and your coming in, and to know all that you are doing." And when Joab had gone from David's presence, he sent messengers after Abner, who brought him back from the well of Sirah. But David did not know it. Now when Abner had returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him privately, and there stabbed him in the stomach, so that he died for the blood of Asahel his brother. Afterward, when David heard it, he said, "My kingdom and I are guiltless before the Lord forever of the blood of Abner the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and all his father's house, and let there never fail to be in the house of Joab one who has discharge or is a leper, who leans on a staff or falls by the sword, or who lacks bread." So Joab and Abishai, his brother, killed Abner because he had killed their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. David's mourning for Abner. Then David said to Joab and to all the people who were with him, "Tear your clothes, gird yourselves with sackcloth, and mourn for Abner." And King David followed the coffin. So they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king sang a lament over Abner and said, "Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put into fetters. As a man falls before wicked men, so you fell." Then all the people wept over him again. And when all the people came to persuade David to eat food while it was still day, David took an oath, saying, "God do so to me and more also if I taste bread or anything else till the sun goes down." Now all the people took note of it, and it pleased them, since whatever the king did pleased all the people. For all the people and all Israel understood that day that it had not been the king's intent to kill Abner the son of Ner. Then the king said to his servants, "Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? And I am weak today, though anointed king, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too harsh for me. The Lord shall repay the evildoer according to his wickedness." All right, so let's go ahead and talk about it. In this chapter, we do see that there is change that's occurring between the house of David and the house of Ishbosheth. And just to give you a quick recap, that the Lord had already spoken over David's life that he would be made king over Israel. And we actually see that Abner does bring this up in 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 18. "Now then do it, for the Lord has spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and the hand of all their enemies." So right there, even Abner, who despite his rebellion against David, trying to keep the house of Ishbosheth intact, that even he knows that the Lord had spoken this over David's life. And interestingly enough, we actually see that there is some tension that occurs between Abner, who's building up the son of Saul, King Ishbosheth, when Abner decides to take for himself a concubine of all things, and Ishbosheth finds offense in this, when actually Ishbosheth is doing practically the same thing, but on a much larger scale than what Abner is doing. Because Ishbosheth, he confronts Abner when he takes for himself a concubine named Rizpah, who I just want to give you a quick breakdown of what a concubine equivalent is. A concubine is basically the biblical equivalent of a fornication buddy nowadays. And saying that, a concubine does not have the same honor or respect as the betrothal of being made into a wife as a wife would be. A concubine is simply just for a quick fix, fleshly pleasure, with no respect added to it. And often a concubine also is kind of like an ordered prostitute, but they don't even make money for it. Their life is basically just subjected to that fornication with somebody that they did not choose. But that person that they did not choose at least provides everything they need to live. So nonetheless, I just wanted to break that down because I just really want to stress how small this matter really was, because it was simply a concubine. It wasn't necessarily one of Saul's previous wives, but just a simple concubine. But nonetheless, Ishbosheth brought this up with Abner, and Abner goes, "Are you really going to argue with me over a concubine of all things?" Abner, who has been building up Ishbosheth, who's been building up the house of Saul, who's been building up the tribe of Benjamin and wanted to keep him in the throne because they are from the tribe of Benjamin. Abner had a lot of agenda for this, but to be confronted on such a small thing as simply taking a concubine of all things, not even a wife, Abner's pissed. He's like, "Wait, have you forgotten everything else that I've done for you? That's it. I took myself one concubine, and that's it. You're making a fuss over it. I'm going to go support the house of David because that is what the Lord had spoken. And right here as well, actually, in 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 9, may God do so to Abner and more also, if I do not do for David as the Lord has sworn to him, going into 10, to transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul and set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah from Dan to Beersheba. And Ishbosheth is so intimidated by this because he could feel the Lord's hand coming upon Abner as Abner is speaking this to Ishbosheth. Ishbosheth loved being king, but at the same time, he knew that the word spoken by Abner was the will of God, and that terrified him. That's why he couldn't speak back. So, nonetheless, Abner seeks out David, and he says, hey, David, I'm defecting to you. I'm ready to help support you to make you king of all of Israel. And David said, that's great, but I am without my wife that was promised to me after delivering 100 foreskins of the Philistines. And that's significant too, because it really goes to reflect everything that David had done for King Saul. But also it was 200 foreskins, by the way. So he brought more than he had even asked for. But also, as I was saying before, that the concubine has very little value. At least the wife has the value of being given in honor and betrothal with that respect. So all David wanted, what was his. Michal was already his wife, his first wife for that matter, that was given to him by Saul. So all he wanted, what was his. And that actually, just saying that right now actually reminded me of something that Jesus says in the New Testament, that pay back what is his. Give back to Caesar what is his, and give back to God what is his. All King David was doing was simply asking for back for what was his. So, nonetheless, it's interesting because then Abner, what is it? David sent over messengers to Ishbosheth, who was now without Abner, requesting that he receives his wife back. And here's the interesting part. His wife had already been given away to another man. But because she belonged to David first, she was taken from the hands of her second husband and given back to David. And her husband just kind of followed along weeping, saying, no, don't take my wife, but not remembering that she belonged to King David first. So when Abner stood and said, go return, get out of here, this is not your wife, he left. Because again, she originally was David's wife. So him keeping Michal or even fighting for Michal would have actually been a dishonor on his own head as well, considering that she was already married. So nonetheless, then of course Abner swears his allegiance, and even rises up the house of Benjamin, or the tribe of Benjamin, to support David in his calling for being king. And David is pleased with this and sends Abner on his way so that he may continue to build up Israel in his favor. However, then we see Joab. Joab has his own wicked agenda for vengeance, that instead of giving it back to the Lord and letting the Lord handle it, he takes matters into his own hands. So he pursues after Abner, deceives him, lies to him, pulls him to the side where no one's going to see him, and while talking to him in private, just decides to stab him in the stomach. If that is not a more cowardly way of killing someone, I really don't know what is. It was entirely out of deception, under the false premise of wanting to speak peacefully. Really just a dishonorable way to kill someone, but also, as David mentioned, dying the way that a fool would die. And I'm not calling Abner a fool by any means, but he was deceived, and he did not deserve the death that he received. What Joab should have done was left it in the hands of the Lord. But at the same time, the Lord knew his purpose and his plans for Abner's life. And the Lord knew that he was going to defect to David and had him spared for that purpose. But Joab, on the other hand, trusting in his own wickedness and being so consumed with wrath and vengeance, that decides to take matters into his own hands. And this actually causes curses to be brought upon his head because he essentially killed an innocent man. Yes, Abner had blood on his hands, but Joab's mistake was he now has blood on his hands for killing somebody that was in support of propagating the Lord's will by making David king. And David handles this really well, by the way. David, he mourns for Abner. He follows after the coffin, weeping over the fact that someone innocent that was in support of him had died. And died in such a dishonorable way, I should mention. We see in his lamentation, 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 34. Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put into fetters. As a man falls before wicked men, so you fell. So he didn't really even have a chance. He didn't die fighting for the kingdom of Israel. He did not die fighting for David. His death was unnecessary to everyone except Joab, of course. So David, he goes into fasting and weeping and mourning. And all of the people of Israel, they loved this because they loved everything that he did because the Lord's hand was on him. And, you know, when the Lord speaks something over our lives, it will happen. The Lord had put his favor on David, and the people saw that. And that's why David's house was growing stronger and stronger. Whereas Ishbosheth, on the other hand, his house was growing weaker and weaker, especially after Abner had defected from him. But nonetheless, the king handled it very well, but he also speaks curses over Joab's life as well. He speaks that Joab, may his house never fail to have somebody who either has leprosy, or let me just read it really quick. Leprosy or discharge, or needing a staff to walk around, or falling by the sword, or lacking bread. Really just all these desolate, awful ways to be either living or dying, essentially. And then also again right here in 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 39, and I am weak today, though the anointed king and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too harsh for me. The Lord shall repay the evildoer according to his wickedness. And I just want to mention that, how significant that is, because if Joab had done that for Abner and left it up to the hands of the Lord, then Joab wouldn't have had all these curses befallen his family. He wouldn't have innocent blood on his hands. But also, he kind of lost favor with David, the uprising king of Israel, as well, simply because of his evil-doing ways and not trusting in the Lord. So, nonetheless, and David also, because he didn't know that this was going to happen, David did not order this, David did not will for this to happen, the blood is not on his hands. He wanted Abner to be on his side. He wanted Abner's support. He wanted Abner to go ahead and to help his kingdom over Israel prosper exactly as the Lord had spoken. So Abner, when he was on David's side, he was coming from a place of the Spirit. It wasn't for his own agenda like before with Ishbosheth, keeping someone from the tribe of Benjamin on the throne, or also keeping himself comfortable by staying in the house that was already established. He defected and went to David on a spiritual level, because he had everything that was of the flesh, his reputation, his concubine, his power, everything was stripped from him. So he gave himself over to David because he knew in his spirit that was the right thing to do. Essentially, I guess what I want to talk about is the difference between Abner and Joab in this chapter, because the Lord actually brought me to this scripture. This comes from Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1. A wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother. Abner, while he did have his own selfish agenda, he did defect to David, and it was from a spiritual place. And because of that, he actually received favor from David, and he was intended to be protected and taken care of in the house of David, for he fulfilled his promise that David had requested of Abner before he officially defected. Joab, on the other hand, Joab, acting in his own evil-doing ways, acting out of wrath and vengeance from his own heart, decides to kill this essentially innocent man that was going to be a key player in the house of David. And because of that, brought curses upon their family and essentially almost bringing grief to his family, if you will, for even having been born in the first place. And so, really, it's important that we pay attention to our actions. I challenge us today to really pay attention to the directive of our actions. Are we acting from faith in the Spirit, or are we acting out of our own heart's wicked desires and heart's wickedness? Because we also have to be careful to separate the two, to ensure that are we acting out of our desires of the flesh, our lusts of the flesh, or are we acting out of, we know in our spirit that this is the right thing to do? But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this word up here. I am praying that this message blessed someone. And if it did, feel free to like, subscribe, and until next time, I hope all of y'all take care. Bye-bye!